Before I begin, let me tell you a little story. A story of love, happiness, and evidential heartbreak, only to rediscover the spark of love a little while later. Because my first major experience with Bloodborne was not a very good one, and it actually almost caused me to drop the game entirely. Be me for a second. Put yourself in my shoes. You watched the Elden Ring announcement trailer in 2019 and thought, wow, that looks really cool, but I probably won't play it because I suck dick at Souls games. Nonetheless, I kept an eye on it because its style and art direction looked really good in my opinion. So I did some research and saw a lot of posts saying that if you've never played a Souls game before, or really anything from Software, that Bloodborne is a good introduction into their games because, from what I've been told at least, it's a lot easier than FromSoft's other games. So I bought it on PS4, loaded it up, and it was like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck is this frame rate? This game only runs at like 30 FPS. This isn't my ass capture card you're looking at, by the way. What you're seeing is legitimately how the game runs. It was a struggle, man, let me tell you. Once I absolutely bodied the werewolf like the Giga Chad I know that I am, I was given the option to choose my first weapons, and I was given one of three choices. And the first time around, I chose the axe, and let me tell you right now, don't do that. I'll explain later why, but just stick with me. I played for a little while and eventually killed the first two bosses, Cleric Beast and Father Gascoigne. And then, nothing really. After I beat those first two bosses, I was like, well, that was neat, and it just kind of ended there for a while. I forgot about Bloodborne for the longest time until Elden Ring came out. I played that game to literal completion and got all the achievements on Xbox and almost all of them on PC. After that, I really had this itch for more Souls-like games. Elden Ring was fucking amazing and I really wanted more, so I went and played Dark Souls 3 and all of its DLCs. I was trying to go for all the achievements, but to do that I had to level up all the covenants to do that, and I just wasn't gonna do that. Even once all that was said and done, my itch for more Souls-like wasn't done yet. I needed more. I was having way more fun than I originally thought I was going to. Then I remembered, oh yeah, I have Bloodborne on my PS4, I should probably revisit that. So I loaded back up on my PS4 and created a new character again because I couldn't remember how different it was from Dark Souls and Elden Ring. Because this game has a European setting, I decided to name my character Oi Schmegma, named after my Elden Ring character, just Schmegmar. Naturally, I made her a red-headed tomboy because it runs in the family, and the journey had finally started yet again. Upon stepping out of the clinic, you are greeted with Central Yharnam, and unpopular opinion time. No matter how great this game is and how much I love it, I will die on the hill that Yharnam is a stupid name. FromSoft's city naming peaked with Anne Orlando, and it's just been downhill ever since. In my opinion, Central Yharnam is probably the best opening area in a From Software game. The first sight you see upon leaving the clinic is this giant-ass bridge that immediately catches your interest, and obviously this is intentional as the game is trying to guide you to this place by making it the first thing you see, and also subtly hints at your current objective by playing sounds on your way up to the first lamp. On the topic of lamps, these things are like the bonfires from Dark Souls. They're your checkpoints in the game. When you die, you come back to these, and they also take you to the Hunter's Dream, which is the hub area of this game, and it's probably my favorite hub area in a Soulsborne game. Upon entering the Hunter's Dream for the second time, I was given the choice to pick my weapons yet again, and this time I developed some common sense and chose the saw cleaver like a civilized person. I learned the hard way not to use the axe because, since this is a From Software game, I was expecting mechanics like poise to be in the game, which it definitely isn't. Bloodborne is more aggression and speed focused than Dark Souls and Elden Ring, prioritizing dodges and parries more than raw strength and poise, so weapons like the axe just don't work here because even though they do lots of damage, more often than not, you'll just get hit out of your attacks and you won't be able to do anything. Though I guess I should have been able to guess this from the very beginning since things like equip load also isn't in the game. After getting set up in the Hunter's Dream, I returned to Central Yharnam to immediately replace my cleaver with the Saw Spear because it's based and I find it skill to be more useful than strength. And next to the Saw Spear is the first Madman's Knowledge you'll encounter in the game, which is a consumable that'll give you insight, which I think insight is a really cool mechanic on your first playthrough and you don't know what it does, but after you figure out how it works, you'll try and do everything in your power to keep it as low as possible. You will need at least one insight though at the beginning in order to wake up the doll in the dream, as she's the person who will level you up, which I didn't discover till my second playthrough and wondered why I couldn't level her up until I beat Cleric Beast, as entering a boss room for the first time gives you insight as well. So I had to kill the Cleric Beast without dying so as not to lose my blood echoes, which is easy because Cleric Beast is actually a little punk ass bitch. Father Gascoigne is a boss that absolutely bodied me when I first installed this game, and that was probably due to the fact that I was comparing it to Dark Souls and Elden Ring and tried to focus on high damage and poise, which I took me a while to discover it didn't exist in this game. But when I started the second playthrough and learned how parries worked and that this game is more aggression based, I made him my bitch. And now that I made it back to where I was previously, everything past this point was brand new, never before seen content for me. Before I go any further, I want to hit you with a little Chekhov's gun. To this day, I still can't figure it out, but for some reason my PlayStation will just randomly decide to commit seppuku and just crash entirely. Not like just Bloodborne, but the entire console will shut down for no apparent reason, and this can be a major problem when playing a From Software game, because if you shut down your console without properly saving, you run the risk of the game not saving your data and just losing it all entirely. I want you to keep in mind this little factoid, because we'll whip right back around to it in just a minute. After nay-naying Daddy Gascoigne, the next area you'll encounter is Cathedral Ward, and while it's not my favorite area of the game, it's definitely the most well-designed part of Bloodborne, as Cathedral Ward serves to be the central area of the game. Almost every other location in the game stems from Cathedral Ward or leads back to it in some way, so you'll end up spending a lot of time here. From here, the first place you'll go to after arriving in Cathedral Ward is this little corner over here to get the top hat, as Bloodborne is virtually unplayable without good fashion. Armor is more or less useless in this game since poise doesn't exist like I said earlier, so you might as well just make your character look as pimpin' as possible. After getting the most vital piece of gear in the game, you'll end up making your way down to Old Yharnam, where you'll fight the Blood-Starved Beast, which is a boss I fucking despise, but for problems that have nothing to do with the boss itself. Before I continue, allow me to note that my PS4 hard crashed about 2 times before reaching Blood-Starved Beast. Just keep that in mind. When I first fought him, I got absolutely destroyed by him multiple times. His poison was easily the most frustrating part of the fight, but later on I discovered Gascoigne's drip in the inside shop, and it made the fight a lot more bearable. After struggling with this fight for a good day, I managed to finally kill him and could finally continue. I returned to the dream, spent my echoes to level up, and then my console crashed again. I turned it back on and reloaded Bloodborne and was greeted with the notification, "Hey, make sure you quit properly or you might lose your data." Thanks mate, I'll make sure to use my magical foresight to quit the game when I sense my console might mysteriously shut down. After closing the little window, I noticed I couldn't press the continue button, only to realize, holy shit, I actually did lose my save data, I just thought they were bluffing. I'm not gonna lie, I genuinely thought about uninstalling at that very moment. I was so upset that I just decided to take a break from the game and went back to Elden Ring for a while until I got over it. After a while of experiencing pain I could only imagine is similar to passing a kidney stone or having your dog die in Minecraft, I did go back to Bloodborne one more time to go and try and redeem itself. And yes, I know it's not Bloodborne's fault, and it's more than likely to be my certified shitbox of PS4 that was the issue. But either way, if it happened again, I was just gonna quit Bloodborne entirely. And let me just say, thank God it didn't happen again, because if it did, I might have missed out on one of the greatest gaming experiences I've ever had. And that's not hyperbole, I genuinely have not enjoyed a game so much since I first played Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube. Bloodborne might already be in my top 5 favorite games already. And so, Oishmegma Jr. joined the hunt, and this time I would not repeat the same mistakes of those who came before her. I tried my best to make her look as faithful as the first Oishmegma, and I think I captured that spunky tomboy aesthetic her mother had going. Why yes, I am a virgin, how could you tell? After going through it 3 times already, I'm pretty sure I could do all of Central Yharnam with my eyes closed, and even after doing it this many times in a short period, I never actually got tired of going through Central Yharnam, and I think this is a testament to how good of a beginning area it is, and how it might be one of just the best video game levels of all time. After simultaneously whipping and nay-naying on Cleric Beast and Gascoigne a 3rd time each, I made my way back to the dreaded Blood-Starved Beast, and since I was still butthurt from last time, I just decided to use the speedrun strat of trapping him in the corner with blood cocktails, and using fire paper and beast blood pellets. And while we're on the topic, let's just talk about the pellets real quick, because it's this fight that made me discover just how OP these things can kinda be. Basically what these do is upon eating one, there's a little bar that appears in the middle of your screen, and performing attacks causes this bar to rise, which increases your damage as the bar rises. Properly utilizing these things can end up just trivializing the whole game, so if you want to play Bloodborne on easy mode, just use these. After killing the beast, I returned to Cathedral Ward, where the door to the Healing Church workshop opens up, and this place leads to the rest of the ward, where you can encounter NPCs behind windows and doors that you can actually send back to the chapel at the beginning of the area to talk to them more. And from here, the path diverges two ways: into the Grand Cathedral to fight Vicar Emilia and continue the main story, or take the beaten path to Hemwick Charnel Lane, which is an optional area that unlocks one of the most important items in the game, the Rune Workshop, which allows you to equip these chicken scratch symbols that give you certain buffs, like more health on visceral attacks, more blood echoes, good stuff like that. Areas like this really highlight one of my favorite things about Bloodborne, and just from soft games in general, which is how connected the whole game world feels. From here, you can see the Forsaken Castle Canehurst, which is an area you can't even visit until later in the game, but it lets you know it's there, and even shows it off specifically in this area since you have to return to Hemwick later in the game to get to Canehurst. And this isn't the only example of something like this. If you look below the bridge you fight the Cleric Beast, you can see the chapel where you'll end up fighting the Bloodstarved Beast, or in Old Yharnam you can see a really late game boss room that won't be accessible for quite a while. Going back to Hemwick for a second, the boss to get the Rune Workshop tool, the Witches of Hemwick, they're not really that good. They're easily a contender for worst boss in the game, even more so since you encounter these witches as regular enemies later in the game. Taking a visit back to Cathedral Ward, if you decide to take the other path to the Grand Cathedral, you'll encounter Vicar Emilia, which is a boss I couldn't figure out for the longest time, till I saw posts online talking about how most bosses have certain weak points, that when broken will make them take more damage in that area and stagger them if damaged enough, so now... This fight is total cheese now, but still one of my favorites just for the boss design alone. After the Vicar is dead, the game goes into nighttime and you're given the password to access the Forbidden Woods where you'll fight the Shadows of Yharnam. Now I come from Elden Ring. That was my first Souls game, and so I hold it dear in my heart since it took my Soulsborne virginity. Even so, the duo boss fights in that game, they're not good. Like, at all. So when I enter a boss room and see not 2, but 3 health bars, my fucking heart skips a beat. Thankfully though, this boss fight is pretty easy once you learn proper crowd control and use the main tombstone in the center of the arena to divide them. Maybe it's because this boss fight was specifically designed to be 3 enemy boss fight, and those are just 2 fucking random enemies put in a boss room together just for the sake of fucking being hard. Anyway, after the Shadows, you gain access to Byrgenwerth. This location is the first sign that this game is more than just some European folklore-inspired game, because that's what I first thought before playing Bloodborne. I thought you'd spend most of the game just fighting things like vampires, werewolves, and things like that. But once you get to Byrgenwerth, you immediately realize that there's more to this game than it originally lets on, with the multi-eyed enemies beautifully named the Garden of Eyes, and the Founding Titan over near the lake. These enemies are noticeably more Lovecraftian than any of the other enemies you've encountered in this game, giving you hints to the tonal shift this game is about to enter. And after entering the school and cannonballing into the lake, you're face to face with Rom, the vacuous spider. Man, fuck Rom. All my homies hate Rom. This googly-eyed turret-shaped asshole is my least favorite boss in the whole game, not even because of Rom herself. Did you know that Rom was a girl? Because I didn't. Do you think she'd want to crush my ball? She's difficult because of the little shit stains surrounding Rom, because these little twats can just straight up one-shot you, or at most two-shot you, and you can't even attack them directly because their heads are armored, and you have to get behind them to kill them. Though thankfully that part's not too hard as they turn very slowly. Rom doesn't even attack you in the first phase actually, and even during phase 2, she only has like 3 or 4 attacks that are easy to avoid. It's just the little crotch goblins that are the real boss fight. Thankfully in this clip, you're seeing I got really lucky with the fight, and even stunned Rom out of her first teleport, which I've never actually done before. Once Romy Mommy is dead, the game changes the time of day again, and its Lovecraftian horrors are finally revealed to you. I guess lore-wise you finally ascended enough to finally see these creatures, because interestingly enough, these monsters were always here, you just couldn't see them, and if you actually have high enough insight, you can see these monsters before actually getting to this part of the game. Now, I want to talk about the design of the Great Ones in Bloodborne, because I think they're easily the best take on Lovecraftian horror I've probably just ever seen. The main problem with Lovecraftian horror and adapting it into things like games and movies is that the whole point of an eldritch godlike being is that these creatures are so beyond humanity's level of understanding that merely trying to comprehend these beings is enough to make somebody go insane. Even in H.P. Lovecraft stories, the beings in them aren't ever given full details as to what they even look like, just vague hints and descriptions that are just enough for you to form an image in your head of what you think they look like without telling you what they look like, and anything you can form in your head is 10 times more interesting than anything that can just be written on paper. So in movies, shows, and games, things like Lovecraftian horror just really tend to not work, because if you can see them, it takes the mystique and horror away of these beings and you're just left with another tentacle monster. And while you may be able to argue this case with Bloodborne as well, at least with this game it reveals to you that they were always there, allowing the player to form an image of what this might be, but not revealing it to you till you've ascended enough. To be honest though, most of you, myself included, probably don't even care about that aspect, and are just like, damn, these things look fucking awesome. And yeah, I'm with you, the design of the Great Ones only get more batshit insane with bosses like Ebrietes and the Moon Presence, but we'll get to those ones later. For now, let's move on to the next optional boss in Dark Beast Peril. While this boss is probably the coolest looking beast in this game, the boss is kinda, yeah. At least with this boss, you unlock the ability to buy bolt paper, which is like fire paper, but shocking. The next boss on the list is the One Reborn, and while they definitely win the award for most disgusting boss, they also win the award for most tedious boss, because as soon as you enter the boss room, you gotta run past it, and go up the stairs to kill the 6 witch ladies, and then go all the way back down to finally start the fight. I actually didn't even know you could kill the witches on my first playthrough and just face tank the fight until it eventually died. Once the One Reborn is dead, you can finally enter the lecture building, which is boring and only serves to take you to both the Nightmare Frontier and the Nightmare Mensis, and oh my god, fuck both of these locations. One is just swamp ass with at least a cool boss fight, and the other is just Frenzy Bar with the funny voice, man.
No, we shall not abandon the dream.
Starting with the Frontier, it's, as I said earlier, just swamp ass made worse if you let patches from the lecture building live. This is also the first place where you encounter the Winter Lanterns, and holy hell, fuck this, take me home, I don't want to be here anymore. Probably the scariest enemy in the game. You can't even sneak up on them because they have eyes all over their Brian, and if they look at you, your health starts dropping and your frenzy meter starts building up. They do have probably one of the coolest sounds in the game, if I'm being honest. Its one saving grace in this area is that at the end of it you get to fight an amygdala, those creatures along the rooftops of Yahar Ghul. A bit of a little tip, if you use Ludwig's Holy Blade and use a overhead slash, you can constantly hit its head and trivialize the whole fight, but you didn't hear that from me. The other Nightmare Mensis is one of the coolest looking areas in the game, but has 2 bosses that are both very mid, and the fucking Winter Lanterns again. Immediately upon entering the nightmare, you're hit with this bright ass light that starts filling your frenzy meter, and you gotta stay out of sight to keep it from going up and take sedatives to remove the bar. This light is actually just a big ass brain that you can later send into the void to get one of the most important items in the game, the Blood Rock. This item allows you to finally upgrade your weapon to max level, and is also the only Blood Rock you can actually find in the base game. There is one more in the DLC, and I think 5 you can get from the Chalice Dungeons, but fuck the Chalice Dungeons. Easily the worst part of the game. You can also buy one for 60 insight each if you're that desperate for another plus 10 weapon, but I've never needed it yet. The first boss in Mensis is Mikolash, and this boss fight is boring fight-wise, but I want to use him as a transition to talk about voice acting in From Software games, because they just don't miss. Go ahead, name one bad voice actor in any FromSoft game. You can't, because they just unironically go so hard. Just take a listen.
Oh, majestic! A hunter is a hunter, even in a dream. But alas, not too fast.
Dear, oh dear. What was it? The hunt? The blood? Or the horrible dream?
Upon my name as Godfrey, the first Elden Lord. Join myself and King as remedy. Together we will devour the very god.
What? Still here? Hand it over, that thing, your dark soul. For my lady's painting.
After killing Mikolash and ramming your hand up some pig ass, you see the lady from Rom's boss room again. That's Queen Yarnum. You kill her, then head up the elevator to find Murgo's wet nurse, which kind of feels like an old school Zelda boss fight with how telegraphed its attacks are and the very robotic ways it moves. I don't know if that's just me, but that's how I always feel when fighting this boss. It's very easy, literally just stand behind it and it can almost never hit you. Once the wet nurse is dead, you return to the dream to find the whole place lit ablaze. Why? I have no clue. It's probably from Gehrman after the doll ignored his tier 3 sub. But speaking of the doll, if you speak to her, she'll tell you Gehrman awaits you at the foot of the great tree, in a part of the dream that was previously inaccessible. Now from here, the game splits into multiple paths. This is the end of the game, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned that. And from here, you can do one of 3 things. Let Gehrman kill you, and the game just ends with the bloody tampon of the wet nurse being your memory as the final boss. Fight Gehrman and kill him only to have the moon presence replace Gehrman with you as the host of the Hunter's Dream. Or, if you've been exploring very carefully throughout the game, you can find 3 umbilical cords taken from infant great ones, and if you consume all 3 umbilical cords before fighting Gehrman, you'll resist the power of the moon presence and fight it as the true final boss of Bloodborne. Upon its defeat, you finally ascend into a true Great One, lifting humanity into its next childhood. That's actually just a trophy description of this ending. I'd have had no idea what was happening if the doll didn't call us Good Hunter. I find it so funny that when the doll first finds you, transformed into an infant Great One, the first thing she says is,
"Are you cold?"
She's just so precious. This is why she's the best girl in FromSoft history. I can't believe I spent all this time simping for Ronnie when the fucking doll exists. You know what? Her and the Firekeeper from Dark Souls 3 are both best girls because they are both too pure for the nightmarish worlds they both inhabit. Now, if you've played Bloodborne, you'll know that there's actually 2 parts of the game I skipped over, and that's because I wanted to put them into this little section of areas I missed the first time around, those being Upper Cathedral Ward and Castle Cainhurst. It really sucks I missed these the first time around because these are probably my favorite areas of the game, probably most people's, and have my 2 favorite bosses from the game, from the base game at least, Martyr Lugarius and the Celestial Emissary. Nah, I'm just fucking with you, it's Ebrietta, silly, who else would it be? I mean, just look at this thing, it's so ugly, and I love it! And Lugarius is just based, he reminds me of the nameless king fight from Dark Souls 3, but it's actually difficult. And this brings me to one of my favorite aspects of FromSoft games, and my very ignorance proves my own point here. And that's how the devs will craft these incredibly beautiful levels with some of the best boss fights in the whole game, and then will hide them so well that a lot of players won't even know they exist when playing, and even finish the game still not knowing they exist. Bloodborne never even alludes to the fact that Upper Cathedral Ward exists, except the fact that you can go to the door early but just can't open it. In this area houses 2 bosses. The only reason I knew Cainhurst even existed is that you can see it from Hemwick, and I saw it in a YouTube video, and even if you know it exists, getting to it is a whole different can of worms. First, to get to Cainhurst, you need to get the summons for it from the room you actually start the game in, which the game never tells you it's there, but the original door is locked, so you need to go through the back alley where Batman's parents were killed from a whole different area of the game to get back into the room, and then return to this specific monument at Hemwick to summon the carriage to get to Cainhurst. It's actually crazy just how much FromSoft hides from their players. If this was a Ubisoft game, there would be a golden question mark on the map with an NPC that would say something retarded like, "My wife's boyfriend told me if you go to this specific location at this time of day and hit the woe, it'll summon a ghostly carriage to take you to that forsaken Castle Cainhurst where you can fight the legendary Martyr Logarius." Imagine how fucking boring that would be. It would take all the fun out of exploring Cainhurst, and this is coming from a retard who actually enjoyed Assassin's Creed Odyssey, though I won't lie, half those reasons were Cassandra's biceps, the other half were her abs. Why yes, I am a virgin, how could you tell? Now we get to the Old Hunters DLC, and oh my god, I already thought I was missing out when it took me this long to play Bloodborne, but it was a fucking crime. It took me 3 playthroughs to finally start the DLC.
Cursed fiends, their children too. And their children forever true.
Now I'm going to keep this short because I have so much to say that I'm planning to make a whole video based on the whole Old Hunters, but to try and summarize this as easily as possible without selling it short, there's basically a boss fight that is the payoff to From Software's unique storytelling, the best Nemesis boss fight in Souls history, a location that truly shows off the Lovecraftian inspiration this game is going for, and an abortion so cinematic it would bring a tear to Ben Shapiro's eyes. Bloodborne, the Old Hunters DLC, is in my humble opinion the greatest From Software experience I've ever had. I love the ever-living shit out of Elden Ring. I didn't think there could be boss fights better than Radagon of the Golden Order and Lord Godfrey. But shit, man, I was wrong. These fights are enough to make a grown man cry both out of anger and pure joy. I've only been playing Bloodborne for a couple of months now, and it's already in my top 5, no, fuck it, top 3 games of all time, right next to Borderlands 2 and Luigi's Mansion. The only true criticism I can give this game is that it's fucking criminal that it's only in 30 FPS. If there is some Eldritch abomination out there listening, or From Software, please give us a remaster with 60 FPS. Maybe a PC port too if we're feeling generous. Both Horizon and God of War got one. I don't see it being too far of a stretch for Bloodborne to get one too. This is all I ask for in life. It's all I need. To be honest, I don't think we'll get a sequel to this game given how the true ending plays out, but I don't care about that. All I want is to re-experience this game the way it was meant to be played. And if by some miracle we get a sequel as well, that's cool too. I definitely won't complain. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I've been obsessed with this game recently and just wanted a place to talk about how much I love it and join the bandwagon of getting this game a proper remaster. But I'm still not done. There's so much I want to say on the Old Hunters that I plan to make a whole other video on that. There's still a while until I'm done jerking off of this game. And just a quick end note, as of editing this, my PlayStation 4 crashed again and I lost all of my save data for a second time. I was so angry at this that I bought a PS5 out of pure spite just so I can play Bloodborne without my console playing Russian roulette. On the bright side though, I can now play the Demon's Souls remake, not for $70 though, that's just criminal, maybe if it goes on sale.